I was approached to see if I do quote a floral survey. And I told Karen, I said, I don't do floral surveys, but what I would do, I said, after looking at it for one day, I said, what I'm really excited is not looking for rare species, because you probably won't find a lot. I'm sure you can. But I'm really excited what's common there. Not what's rare there, but what's common there. So I said that what I would do is describe what you see on the ground, try and document what are the significant ecological attributes, make some assessment of existing or potential threats to the ecological integrity. And then as I went along, this became important to me. As I understood how much it's currently used for recreation, how much it could be used for recreation, it kind of gave more thought to that. And I have a background. I've been 10 years with almost 10 years with the Bluff Wilderness Organization, including 3 years as co-chair. So I'm very familiar with what's involved in managing trails and so on and so forth. And I got quite excited when I began to understand really what's there. And my methods are very low tech. It's basically me in a backpack with a camera and some pretty minimal equipment in it. I often had this guy with me, Derek. And I did, it's descriptive stuff. But my focus was really on land, on description of the plant communities, on the kind of nature of the forest. I tried to document everywhere I walked all trees that were at least 16 inches and larger. And I'll talk about this pit and mound topography. And then on the water, I looked at the extended species composition of the wetland fringe, of the aquatic plants. I don't have much of that in this presentation, but I did a lot of it. I did routine measurements of electrical conductivity and pH using very sophisticated equipment I could carry in my pocket. There's pocket meters. Electrical conductivity is a very easy measurement. It's quite rigorous. It's quite robust, the measurement. pH is a little trickier. You have to make sure you calibrate it and so on. But those two things can tell you an awful lot if you're just doing them routinely. And I use that a lot. And then also on one day, we borrowed equipment from St. Mary's University to do profiles in Sandy Lake. And those are kind of the focus. And I mentioned Derek, and this is Ed Glover's boat we borrowed for these measurements. And then also Colin Gray, I invited Colin Gray to help me document some of the old growth forests. He's from the Mersey Tobiatic Research Institute. And then laterally, I got involved with Bob Guscott, who's a guy, you probably know him, people here, retired from DNR. And we've done some of this pit and mound work together. Okay, now there have been accumulated over the years, and this is the work of Karen putting all that stuff together, but there's a fairly good list of the fauna and the fish. There's certainly more that could be added here, but at least there's some list of these things here. Clarence Stevens from the Halifax Field Naturalist, a really superb field naturalist, has been doing studies there. So there's a fairly comprehensive list of these things. And my focus is on plants. I'm just trying to say I didn't really cover these things. And I'm not a skilled bird watcher, so I couldn't do that. But it's nice that they have that information. And I just took some of that recently. This is just from an article where they listed some vertebrate species associated with certain structural features of older forests. I just happened to have that list. I thought, I'll go back to the other list, see how many of them are around Sandy Lake. And they're almost all around Sandy Lake. So what it means is that it's supporting this old forest fauna. And that's important. And we're talking about things that are associated with certain structural features, but there's another feature of these forests that's important. They're large and they're extensive. It's a big patch of forest. And so you have things of the forest interior there, such as the ovenbird. And they don't occur where it's very patchy because there's too many things coming in from outside that will eat them up. They nest on the forest floor and so on. And this, pileated woodpeckers, typical example of older forests that need these big old trees and dead wood and so on. So these two types of studies are complementary. And I'll just mention something else very quickly that I think is significant, is that there are lots of predators in here, the bobcat, coyote, et cetera in here. And there's also deer, and there's also the deer mouse. And do we know what the deer and the deer mouse carry?
Environs.
They carry Lyme disease, exactly. And it's now quite well documented from New York State, which is really the center of Lyme in North America. They've done quite detailed studies now because they have so much data on where Lyme occurs and this and that. And there's pretty good evidence that forest fragmentation is a big predictor of Lyme disease. And the reason is, they've even gone into mechanism of it. The reason is that where the forest remains intact, you have lots of predators eating the deer mice. And it's the deer mice that are the kind of controlling factor in the level of Lyme disease. So the fact that you have that huge forested area there, I think, is really important in breaking, reducing as much as possible the spread of that Lyme disease. And just a kind of anecdote, Derek over here is quite paranoid about about ticks, and so am I. But anyway, in our journeys, we always watch for them. The only time we ever encountered them was in a clear cut. Derek had 5 on his pants. I had none because I had tick repellent clothing on. I never, and I'm looking for them. Never encountered them in the forest. It's not an absolute, but it's some indication of why these things are good for us. Trying to move a little bit more into this whole area. What are the assets of this area? So I've classified in terms of services. 2 big services: conservation of regional biodiversity and ecosystem services, and social and health benefits. This is related primarily to forests and surface waters. And these are some of the components over here: diverse forest types, all major tree species, approximately 50%, maybe higher, I don't have an exact number, but it's in the area of 50% multi-aged old growth forests. Habitat for a wide variety of species, connectivity to the Chebucto Peninsula. Surface waters, water storage. Sandy Lake is a deep enough lake that it stratifies, and it keeps cold water for the salmonids in the bottom. It has a relatively high pH, around 6.5, so it's hospitable to salmonids and so on. And as I mentioned, it has abundance of frogs and turtles, and has a lot of other life. And then the social and health thing is really wildland recreation close to high density residential areas. Now, why did it do that? I haven't stepped on anything.
It has to hit a cord.
I think that was psychological or something.
Here we are.
Oh dear me. I'll go through that, please. I'm gonna cry again. Okay. So I think this is very important that there's, and I've mentioned some of these things going through here. And we're talking about diverse recreational activities being possible here. And I think this is really important. If you look at all the new development coming out of Dubai High and so on. And here you have right there this huge area for recreation.